Okay, engine repair test 24-27. Aftermarket performance camshafts often produce an uneven idle which is accompanied by high vacuum. It's not accompanied by high vacuum, it's accompanied by low vacuum.
That's why you gotta keep on some of these with oversized cams or whatnot, you gotta give it a bunch of juice to keep it from dying out.
Yep. Well, you know, the kind of cam that they used to use, well, you can actually see it if you've been around a lot of that hot rod stuff. The engine's sitting here and it's acting like it's kind of wanting to jump out of the car, you know, those are the ones. But the ones that hunt up and down, you know, I ain't got no use for those. I mean, personally, I wouldn't want one of those in my car if I was going to cam one up. If I wanted to cam it up, I'm going to cam it up just enough to where it's got a little bit of a rough idle, but I don't want it to go there and go, trying to die, you know.
There's one of the dudes in Little like they's got a Mustang, some old Fox bodies. He said,
yeah. The thickness of the head above the face of the valve is the margin. Now, what are we talking about there? What's the thickness of the head above the face of the valve? Thickness of the head. It's easier for me to draw that than it is to take a valve and show it to you.
That thing will get beat if that thing is too thin.
Huh?
That thing is too thin. It gets real hot. It can cause like detonation or preignition.
It can. That's really good. That's good, Sean. You picked up on that. You know, when you look at the valve right here, and I've actually drawn this before. That's the edge of the valve. This is the margin right here. See that? And this is the place where deposits build up. You've seen these valves on the gas pump pictures. You know, you got somebody out there?
I thought I saw somebody.
yeah, I thought I saw somebody too.
Saw a shadow.
Yeah.
If there's anybody out there, I don't know who it is. We may have ghosts in the shop. Okay. Number 3, in preparation, well that's actually true, that's number 2 is, in preparation for valve removal, tap the valve stem to loosen, valve stem end to loosen any varnish. What happens if you tap the valve stem end and you make a little hickey on it? It won't come out of the valve guide, you know, or if it does, it's going to score it really bad. They don't hit the end of the valve stem, you know, to loosen varnish and all that. Now I will tell you what, sometimes the varnish, this varnish that is on these engine parts makes them, whenever you got tight clearances like the valves sliding out of their bores or, you know, cam followers, that little bucket looking things with the shims on top of them, those things right there will stick in their borders sometimes if they're varnished. And I did a valve adjustment on a Volkswagen Rabbit one time, and the valves on that doggone thing were way loose, but they had been traveling like that for a long time, and they slide in those bores. And because they've been traveling the same way and not going as deep as they should because the little shim was too thin on top of them, I don't know how they got that way. That wasn't something you usually see. And we did valve adjustments 10 times a day. But on that particular one, it was a diesel, and I did the valve adjustment on it and set the valve like it was supposed to, and everything was fine when the engine was hot. But when it was cold, when those cam lobes would shove them cam followers down, it would stick in that doggone varnish. And then the piston would just bump the valve enough to break it loose, and it would click and hit the, you know, close the valve and hit the doggone camshaft, and then it would eventually fire up. But what was awful was, it would, when he came to crank it up to leave, it was making this crazy noise when you're cranking, clack, 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 you know, and then it would fire up. Well, that wasn't really my fault because it could have happened to anybody because the valve sticking in that varnish. Okay, so this guy threw a screaming fit and said he wasn't going to pay nothing until we fixed it back like it was supposed to be and all this kind of stuff. And the only easy way out of that I could see was to set the valves really loose like they were, and so that they didn't go down there sticking that varnish. Now, the right way to fix that would have been to remove the camshaft, pull all those cam followers out, take the head apart, and polish those bores to get that stuff out of there so the cam followers could go down in there real smooth. Who's going to pay for that? He wasn't going to pay for that. I wasn't going to pay for it. I wasn't going to do it for free. The shop wasn't going to pay me to do it. So I just set the valve back loose again and let him go with it. It didn't really hurt anything. But anyway, that's one of the things that we just charged $18 to adjust the valves on one of them things. That's what the dealership charged to do a valve adjustment on one of them Volkswagen Rabbits in 1983, you know. Okay, number 4. Torque to yield bolts should be checked for wear and then reused if they're okay. That is absolutely false. You're not supposed to reuse torque to yield bolts. Number 5. A visual inspection is often all that is needed to condemn a camshaft. That's true. Although, I will tell you this, it says often all that's needed. Sometimes a camshaft will be bad and you cannot see it. You can have a bad camshaft that will even be causing something like an engine skip, and you will not see anything wrong with that. Now that is so very rare as to almost never happen. But I have seen it on brand new cars where it would be skipping on one cylinder, and that was in '84 when I ran into that. I was working at Lincoln Mercury place, and the old men on the other side of the shop troubleshot that car that came in off the lift and it was skipping, and they said the only thing that can be wrong with this is the camshaft. Well, I was young enough in the industry. I guess at that time I'd been working on cars about 9 years. I'd done a lot of engine work, and I said, I don't understand how they can arrive at that, but okay, you know, they gave it to me to do it, and I put a camshaft in it. Couldn't see nothing wrong with the camshaft that I pulled out of it. It looked just like the one, and the one we put in there was a perfect circle camshaft we got from Parts House. Put that camshaft in there, it ran so smooth, but you could not look at that camshaft and see there was anything wrong with it. That's the point. Okay. And the more you stay in this business, the more you'll have stories like that where you find something that just didn't make any sense. You know, I mean, the neon had you bumfuddled a little bit, but we just had to get in there and dig the right way to find the problem, you see. And there were people that were talking about an injector already, but we needed to make sure that we had some numbers to show somebody. Say, yeah, this has got 10 pounds less drop than the other ones. We know it's not flowing as much fuel. We need to find out why. And so, but cleaning the injectors with an injector cleaning thing is not going to get rid of that rust. You're not going to dissolve that rust with injector cleaning. All it does is cut varnish. See what I mean? All right, now then, number 7. The amount of clearance between the valve guide and the stem of the valve is typically 1 to 3 thousandths. 1 to 3 thousandths. Technician A says valve guides may be integral to the cylinder head. He's right about that. They may be. But a lot of times your machine shop will drill it out and they'll put some guides in there, you know, if it's wore out, you have to do it that way. Technician B says valve guides are usually cast iron or bronze. Well, that's true. My dad, whenever he did put valve guides in them bug heads, he would do what he would do is he would tap threads in the valve guide, the old valve guide, and he'd screw a bolt in there, and then he'd flip the head over and he'd use a punch driving against that bolt to knock the valve guides out. I mean, that was just a standard procedure for doing that. And then he had his new valve guides in the freezer. So they'd be cold and smaller, yeah. And then he'd put them in there, and he had a special punch that he would knock them down in there with. Now, a lot of the valve guides that they put in machine shops, they have to have a reamer. You know, after they put them in there, they got to ream them out so that the valve will slide in there and have the right clearance and all that. But he never did have to ream any. They always fit just right whenever he did it. Of course, the heads he was working with were aluminum, too. He had a thing that he could resurface some aluminum Volkswagen bug cylinder heads, and he cut 125 thousandths of an inch off the cylinder heads on a possum hunting car I had, the 58 Volkswagen bug. It was the first year that they did away with the little window in the back, made it big, you know, and that doggone thing, it had real high compression. The compression was so high that it started pulling the studs out of the block that held the heads on eventually. But boy, would that thing scream. It was tough, you know. And it was an old car with a 6-volt starter, and we upgraded it to a 12-volt system. And so that 6-volt starter just spin the heck out of that 6-volt starter with a 12-volt battery. You know, it didn't hurt it. Just spin it real fast, and it could handle all that extra compression, you know. But I really surprised the guy out there on Interstate 10 who was driving a Jaguar one time with that thing. Whenever he kept passing me, giving me the, you know, the termite look, you know, when they look at you like they think you're that little car. And I had to watch the oil pressure. And the next time he went by, I caught another gear and I ran off and left him. He was really surprised because we were running pretty fast on that interstate, you know. But that car would absolutely fly. It was an incredible little machine. It was an uncomfortable thing. Never even breathed air conditioner in that thing. But it really scooped. Heck, that was in the 70s. Number, let's see, 11. Let's see, wait a minute. Number 10. The customer, no, wait a minute. Technician A says, this is number 9, to cut the valve face at an interference angle that's typically 1/2 to 1 degree different from the angle of the valve seat. Okay, you understand what that means? Interference angle, number 9. That's A, he's right. Technician B says sodium fill valves are machinable. Well, you don't want to cut into a sodium fill valve because you're going to have an explosion if you get in there where the sodium is, okay? Sodium's nasty. But it helps the valves run cooler, I think is why they use it. But anyway, the interference angle on that valve job, you know, if you've got your the angle of that cut. Basically what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to have it so that it's 1 degree difference. See the seat, you can have some really exact rocks, you know, set up. There's a 1 degree difference there, so that whenever the valve pulls shut, it will tighten up. It's going to distort a little bit, and that's going to make an absolutely perfect seal there. See what I'm saying? So your seat would look like that, and there'd be a 1 degree difference in the angle that way. That's what they're talking about here. And also, you'll hear Joe Gearhead talk about his 3-angle valve job. Well, all valve jobs are a 3-angle valve job. I mean, that's not. Don't try to impress me with that, because anybody that does a valve job right is going to do a 3-angle valve job. And basically, what that means is when they do the seat, they're going to have this, they're going to have that, they're going to have this. See that? That's going to be the seat, the inside of the seat, and then the valve will actually go right here. So see, you got 1 angle there, 1 angle there, 1 angle there. That's a 3-angle valve job. I mean, they love to say that. Like some of the guys that used to be Holly carburetor buffs used to talk about 2-stage power valves. Well, I ain't impressed with that either. I mean, it sounds good to say it. It sounds like, ooh, I got a 3-angle valve job done on anybody. Oh, give me a break. All right. I said this yesterday. If you're really good at what you do and you've had a lot of success in your field, whatever that field may be, if it's fixing cars or whatever, nothing gives you a license to be a jerk. You know what I mean? Ain't nothing. But, you know, you need to be a nice guy that doesn't mind sharing your knowledge. The more knowledge you share, the smarter you're going to get, which is all there is to it. If you try to act like you're indispensable and you don't want to share what you know with anybody, you're not going to get any smarter, and a lot of time you're going to find out they're actually smarter than you are anyway. That's just the way it works, you know. All right. Now then, let's go here. Which one are we on? Number 10?
Yes.
The customer's concerned about the cloud of blue smoke that occurs after starting the engine. The technician will check for what? What have I told you? I've told you about this repeatedly. Valve stem seals. And I've also showed you over there on the wall. See that little spark plug with that ice cream looking stuff on it? Mm-hmm. That's caused from valve stem seals. You see plugs that look like that because they're skipping or misfiring or uneven rough idle, you know, random idle miss. It's going to be because of that. If you see that, that's valve stem seals. It's causing that typically. You know, what happens is the valve stem seals on the exhaust valves don't typically leak that bad. Why? Why do the intake valve stem seals typically leak worse than the exhaust valve stem seals? Anybody know?
Because the heat makes it expand.
Well, the exhaust valve running hotter than the intake one. All right, you got the valve guide right here. You got a little boss up here that the valve stem seal goes on, except, you know, the head's like that right there. All right, your valve is going here. You got a spring right here, you know, and all that. And up here you got your keeper and everything like that. All right. Down here, where the valve opens, you know, you've actually got this passage going through here. All right. What do you have down here in the intake side of the head that you don't have on the exhaust side? That's going to cause oil to go past this in there? Vacuum. Think about it. If you got valve stem seals, was the guy that was president of college here for a while had a 91 Dodge pickup, and we put valve stem seals on it because it was broken when he cranked up after a while. But the valve stem seal that we got from the parts house, and you can get valve stem seals that look good and ain't worth a crap. Now the newest ones that you get will look like a little miniature seal that's got a little steel band, and they'll have a garter spring, and those are really good. The old ones used to be just they almost look like a doggone old spark plug boot or something. They would just be something that looked like this. And it was just a soft piece of rubber that you just slide down over there, and that's supposed to keep the oil out of there. Well, he put them on there right. I mean, he did it on the head. He aired up the cylinders, pulled the springs off, put the seals on there, put it back on, did every cylinder on there. And then, and we had also, whenever he first came here, he said the car would cut up going down the road. And I found out that the oxygen sensor was bad causing that. And on those it can do that. If it's just above a half a volt, it'll cause the fuel trim to start doing crazy things to try to correct that, and it stalls beside the road, and then you got to I told pull the oxygen sensor loose and grounded the signal going into the computer so it would ignore that for, you know, and it went good. But the long and the short of it was, and where I was going with this before I got sidetracked, the valve stem seals worked their way up off from where they were supposed to be, because they were old crappy cheap valve stem seals that we shouldn't have never used to start with, because they can look good and be bad. And they started pulling oil in there when the engine was running. That started tricking the oxygen sensor and making it do crazy things, because you had this oil and everything going in there. And the people at he was over in another city, so he took it to the Dodge place, and they wanted to put an oxygen sensor on it. They didn't have no clue the valve stem seals were causing this problem, but we did, because we were the ones that put them on there. And I said, this thing's got too much white smoke coming out. Something wrong with them valve stem seals. When we pull the springs off, them valve stem seals had worked their way up the stem. And we got some real valve stem seals and put on it. You never had that trouble again. All right. Okay, this is engine repair, guys. That's why we're talking about this stuff, okay? Number 11, technician A says the first step the technician should take when reconditioning the cylinder head is carefully disassemble and inspect it and related components. Okay, that is right, but it's right with a caveat. You have to clean the cylinder head really, really good. Now, you notice when we get those heads back from Pilchers, they look like a brand new head. You might like one on my Jeep. You remember that? It looked like he had that thing wrapped in saran wrap.
Yeah.
And he had it totally machined pretty and flat, and it was perfect when he got it back, you know. And quality work like that is hard to come by. He wants all the dust out of everything. Technician B says some cylinder head components need to be returned to their original locations to prevent premature failures. And both those guys are right. Okay, number 12, to determine the condition of valve guides, you're supposed to do what? You can do an engine vacuum test, basically. That's what you can do on that. Causes of burned valves include all of the following, except D. Excessive spring tension is not going to cause valves to burn. There ain't no way it can. Understanding that, all you got to do is think about it. Okay, we're almost done here. The flat wound damper inside a valve spring is to reduce harmonic vibrations. All right. When both valves are open at the same time, what's that called? I've talked about it.
Top dead center.
Well, you're closed. It's top dead center exhaust, but that's overlap. It's overlap. O-V-E-R-L-A-P. Overlap. Overlap meaning both of them are open at the same time. Why do they do that? You know, why do they overlap it? What's happening whenever the intake valve opens, the exhaust valve is not quite through closing. Okay, you got that? Now where's the piston? Where is the piston when the intake valve opens?
Down. Well, halfway.
It can't be, because it's going to have to pull air in and fuel. So it's got to be at the top. Top dead center exhaust is when the intake valve opens. Right? Because what's happening? The piston's going up, it's pushing out the exhaust. When it hits top dead center exhaust valve is closing up by that time, and before the exhaust valve closes, the intake valve begins to open. Okay, so you got just a tiny little bit of space in there. As the piston begins to come down and draw air fuel mix in there, what is left over in there, that little bit of space, is what's left over from the exhaust. If you built an engine without valve overlap, you would have something that would have rough idle and random misfire stuff. But basically, whenever that air coming in is supposed to finish purging the exhaust that's left over, because if some of it stays in there, it's going to idle rough. Now that was what they did on the 95 Ford Contour. They did away with EGR, but they had a variable cam timing on their exhaust camshaft, and they would close the exhaust valve early so as to deliberately leave some exhaust gas in there. Instead of recycling the exhaust gas, they just leave some in there. But they had the valve coming before it would change. See what I'm saying? They was able to control it. Had a little helical cut gear that would move in and out, and it would change the angle. Okay. So anyway, that's basically, they were actually doing what overlap is supposed to do away with on that thing. All right. You guys stay with me here now. 16. The automotive manufacturer recommends technicians use a plastic scraper. Who in here has ever used a plastic scraper? I don't know that I ever have, unless I was putting sheetrock or something, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not saying that I disagree with them, but find a mechanic anywhere that always uses a plastic scraper.
My brother gave me one for my cast iron though that he uses on airplanes and stuff.
Yeah.
They have to use them. Well, they don't want to wear down some metal part.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the deal here. They don't want you to do that. Say something else. Those little 3M bristle discs, those things are not your friend if you get too aggressive with them. Now, if you know how to use them, they're okay. But you can overdo that little white 3M bristle disc. It's supposed to be okay for aluminum. If you get too aggressive with that darn thing, you can make wavy, cylinder heads that won't seal for nothing, because you take any of that metal off. And that thing spinning 20,000 RPM or whatever, that little thing spinning it, you're not going to have, it's not your friend. So you got to be really, really careful. Now, cast iron, you ain't really hurt cast iron with a bristle disc. But that aluminum, too daggum soft for that. All right. Okay, to check aluminum cylinder head for warpage, you check the surface lengthwise and diagonally using a straight edge. That's what we checked that Honda cylinder head and found 11 thousandths of warpage. 18. Some manufacturers will allow the use of an abrasive disc or cookie on a die grinder as long as the material is suitable for the job. Well, I already covered that a minute ago. And 19. If abrasive discs are allowed, the technician must be sure to specify a soft white plastic disc with 120 grit abrasiveness. Finally, cylinder head cam bores should be checked for an out-of-round condition. What's really interesting to me is they don't put bearings in the cylinder head in the camshaft bores on most engines. They just, have you ever took a Briggs & Stratton lawnmower engine apart? Did you notice that when you take the rod loose from the crankshaft, there's not a bearing? They just let the machined inner surface of that rod be the bearing. And it's aluminum. Got it? It's pretty interesting, isn't it? But now the cam shafts are pretty much done the same way. They spin. Hey, Todd. They spin.
Well, slim.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, we're just about done though. All right, you guys get those turned in, and we'll. Now, Jeremy, if you want to stay and just hang around the shop, you can, or if you need to.
I got to run to the hospital. I got to do X-rays on me this morning.
Yeah. Okay. That's fine. He totaled his truck.
I put my 84-165.
Yeah.
Was you the one that robbed OPEX on there, trying to get one?
Did you? What were you? You said you looked down at your speedometer when the trooper met you. How fast were you going?
55.
Yeah. But then you went. How come you went up going 65 when you crashed?
I started spinning.
Oh, okay.
Revved up on it.
That was nasty.
I reckon I was going 65.
He says the truck was pulling to the right a little bit anyway, but when he looked down at the speedometer, and then he looked up, he was already in the ditch.
Because I was sitting here on the right side. I look, see a state trooper looking at him. I look at my speedometer. Look up. There's a sign coming in. I'm already in the ditch. So I go to get out of it, and it just rolls.
Yeah. I got a check taped in there for you.
Okay, that's fine.
And then she said that I was there.
Nice.
That was nasty, wasn't it? I was
My
grabbing.
cousin's the one that the sheriff deputy that wrecked the other day.
Goodness.
They just pulled him off of life support last night.
Wow. Well, he was pretty darn lucky. That truck, he said it flipped side over side, end over end, everything.
Yeah, I showed Eddie that last week. He took it up there, and I don't know if they.
Well, I called them yesterday about it, and they said that she said that she knows for an absolute fact that check for these other ones is already there, but for some reason it hadn't been cashed. She said it got sent. They sent the check, but nobody's cashed it.
How does she know it's there though?
Well, I don't know.
Who knows it's there?
No.
My people?
Marlena. I didn't call your people. I called Marlena, the lady over at the office, and I said, "What's going on with this?" And I told her, she said, "The check is there." And well, I say that. She said the check's been issued, it's been mailed, but it hasn't been cashed. Now, it hasn't lost their mail. You know what I mean? But somebody needs to find out if the check was lost. They need to stop payment on issuing another one. And she said that check was cut and it was sent at the right when it was supposed to be. And she said they're mystified as to why it hasn't been cashed, but I don't know. But that was what she told me yesterday when I was asking her about it on the phone.
Let me call them off.
Yeah.
Now, Mexican restaurant here, I cut them off to like 5, 6.
Yeah.
They like to go up to 13.
They're gonna rebid everything at the end of this year anyway.
We're not getting it, I can go ahead and tell you that.
It's gonna be rebid.
I
don't know.
He already made that very clear to me and my manager.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. Something about the debit charge, and I made it right, so I
Yeah.
figured he'd try to keep it up straight.
yeah.
I got a new manager, and I'm a new guy.
Yeah, yep.
I enjoy it.
I'm trying to find my glasses.
How about you?
You got a good pass.
Just put them underneath that paper.
Maybe. Well, I looked under this paper. Oh, there they are. I laid them up there. Now I gotta put my camera back on charge.